Hello folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another Legacy stream. Today we are playing with a blue-white vial list, and thank you very much to Lord Darkview for donating to make this happen. This was designed by, I think it's JTL005, who was the same person who designed Esper Vial. I am on record as being a strong hater of Esper Vial. I really don't like the mana base of that deck. I feel like its mana base is just pushed too much, and you lose too many games to your own land base, especially when paired against like Delver or Wasteland. Esper Vial is the sort of deck that when it gets to do its thing, it's incredibly powerful. But I just did not like the number of times that I just had non-games. Well, this deck has the same overall game plan as Esper Vial, but it's only in 2 colors. So you're still looking to be this Ether Vial value-oriented deck, but some of the cards that you're blinking have changed a little bit. So you get Fibble Flip the Lost, which basically, for our purposes, is going to serve as a blue Elvish Visionary. So when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. If somehow it enters from your library or is cast from your library, you draw 2 cards instead. And then we are going to blink this with things like Charming Prince and Restoration Angel and maybe Baron. Baron is one of the big engines that makes this deck work. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, you draw a card. And we have a way of returning a permanent to our hand every single turn. And that's with Haka, Whispering Raven. So when it deals combat damage to a player, return it to its owner's hand, and then scry 2. And technically, there's another side to this card, but it costs 5 mana. So the 5 mana side gets +1/+1 for each card in your hand, and for each foretold card you own in exile. At the beginning of your end step, you choose a card type, reveal the top 2 cards of your library, put all cards of the chosen type revealed this way into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So technically, that can be a big fat creature that sometimes draws cards endgame, but we're really looking at the Haka side. So the idea is, like, we vial this in, wait, hold on. Can we vial this in? I'm gonna have to figure that out. I haven't tried to vial in the backside of a card before. Well, we're either gonna vial that in or cast it. Maybe cast it. And attack with it. And then you go and return it to its hand, and then you get to draw a card. The idea is that you have a recurring 2-mana draw engine every turn, sort of like the Elvish Visionary Wirewood Symbiote. Okay, confirmed, cannot vial it in. Alright, yeah. I started saying it, and I'm like, that's probably not right. Now, another really neat thing that we can blink is Gilded Drake. A lot of text on the card, but the gist of it is that you exchange Gilded Drake for another creature when it enters the battlefield, and if you can't do that, you sacrifice Gilded Drake. So you give your opponent a sick 3/3 flyer, but hopefully in exchange you're stealing their Uro or something ridiculous like that. So this is sort of the game plan here. We're this late game, value-oriented blue-white deck, and we have Meddling Mage, Force of Negation, and Force of Wills to make sure that we don't lose to combo. By the way, did I mention the Yorion? We are also an 80-card deck list, so we can use Yorion to blink all our critters as well. The sideboard is largely to patch up combo matchups because you assume that you are going to win the game 1 scenarios versus a lot of fair decks because you can outvalue them. So notice like the anti-storm cards, the anti-graveyard cards, the rest in peace. We do have Teferi, which is probably going to be for fair decks, but for the most part, we're looking to beat unfair decks in the post-sideboard games. Yeah, there is no Soul Herder here. There's no Venser. There's no Flicker Wisp. It's a little bit different than how Esper Vial is built. I'm excited to see how this feels in practice. One more cute thing because it's easy to miss. So there's this Obero Palace in the clouds, and you can tap it, or well, more accurately, you can pay 1 mana to return this to its owner's hand. And so that can also be a draw engine with Baron. All right, for folks who are watching on the YouTube end, if you're excited about this legacy content, please consider throwing me a like before we get started with this video. And if you want to try this out yourself, remember that the donation information as well as the deck lists are always in the video description. Let's battle. All right, taking a look at my opening hand, it's a little bit slow. I think I'll still keep this. I have an extra Baron to pitch to the Force of Will if I need to force something. Elite Spellbinder. Yes, thank you. That's it. I think I need to force that. I don't really want to, but I'd really prefer to have access to both of my colors. Hello, Mr. Thraben. What brew is it today? Oh, you'll find out. I'm about to summon it. They get a smiley face in chat. Yeah, Goblin Rival Master is fine. I will answer that eventually with a Palace Jailer. Probably. Oh, wow, that's beautiful. There's a couple of different ways to play this turn. I can get my white mana now, but then I can't cast Baron unless I play Tundra, and in which case can't Palace Jailer next turn. I think I just want to start holding the board. I go ahead and make them respend the mana on that. I'm gonna try to play a nice patient game here. 5 mana could be like a reality smasher. Oh, it's the squad. Alright, we'll see how bad this is. Awkward. Double block one, Alice Jailer. The other is pretty good. This isn't necessarily keeping my engine intact in the most meaningful way, but it's setting me up for success. I don't want my opponent to become the Monarch. You don't want to be giving the like aggressive red deck. Oh, that's also very good. You don't want to be giving the aggressive red deck extra cards. Like, I am looking to run my opponent out of resources. I think if I get to untap now, I probably win this game. Lord Darkview, this is game 1, match 1. So, like, you're basically right on time. I'm only going to get 1 spell in this turn cycle because I'm going to be at 5 mana. That's a good spell. Cast that one. I think I'm fine with just casting that one. I take out their critter? I could take out the Trinosphere. Swords to Plowshares, the Legion War Boss afterwards. That's pretty good. Let's just do that. Yeah, not me. The draws have been okay. I'll level with you. Alright, yeah, my opponent's throwing in the towel there. We're not gonna sideboard much against this deck. Teferi's okay. Force of Negation is okay. How is Gilded Drake? Gilded Drake is interesting. Taking some of their stuff is very good for me. Lavinia is okay. Like, Lavinia is a 2/2 that, like, can just trade with a lot of those bodies. The other text is fine. I believe Lavinia has been fixed on Magic Online. So the thing is, if my opponent's playing the Basuda red version, there's fewer things like Karn and Chandra in that list that I have to worry about. So I don't know that Lavinia is actually great. Kind of like the tempo and life gain of Teferi, where if my opponent attacks this for 1 or 2, that gives me some extra life. I think I take over these games as they go long. I think I'm going to trim on Gilded Drake because giving my opponent the 3/3 when I don't have the opportunity to bounce it isn't the best, but the Gilded Drakes do get better if I'm bringing in the fairies. Is this a 2/3 bird? It's a 2/3 bird. That's actually, like, surprisingly good. I also just think I'm going to trim a Brainstorm. Like, it's fine. But I think I'm going to be spending my mana on creatures a huge portion of the time. Double flip. This is a hand that is going to be bad against a Blood Moon. But otherwise, I think the hand is fine. Like, I have multiple 2/3s that can just jam up the board against early bodies. Yeah, I have, like, one way to get the Monarch, though, right? Like, I have a single Palace Jailer. I am getting blue 100% of the time with my fetch land. I'm just going to play Misty here. Yeah, so, like, we happened to draw the 1 Monarch card this time around. Alright. Moon resolves. Actually, maybe it's better to just draw with this first. No, I can just leave this back on D. So the plan is not to attack with this, but just to leave this chilling. Yeah, so then we'll likely trade this with Rabblemaster next turn, and then we can play another one. Demonic Tutor Mode activate. Basic land, please. Him. This is sick as hell. Oh, this doesn't get to bounce Blood Moon. That's a bit of a shame. It's fine. I think I just go ahead and bounce this. And I think this is worth it. The scry seems really good. Yeah, we don't want those right now. I believe I've already played my land. Yep. Did I not draw? Or did I draw this? No, I didn't draw, did I? Alright. So this is game 1 versus Proliferate. So Baron didn't trigger off. What's the backside of this called? Aka. No, the two abilities are separate. So the second ability says at the beginning of the end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, draw a card. I guess let's do it this way. So I really don't want my opponent to have Fireflux Squad. Fireflux Squad is so good for them here, just turning that Goblin token into some other real threat. Fuck. No! Uh, Hitting another Fireflux Squad. Not great for me. I think my plan here is to trade with bodies and reduce the number of bodies that are in play. And then just play out the front side of this sucker. Guess I want creature. It was Wasteland and Tundra. We did not get to draw 2. Okay. I need to will a basic planes to the top of my deck, I think. They get a chalice too now. Oof. Yeah, I think I'm just going to fall too far behind on tempo here. I can bounce one thing. I can technically stay alive here, but I think I'm going to go ahead and concede the game. The tide has tipped in favor of my opponent. They're at 18. I'm at 4. Hello and welcome. So honestly, I like Force of Negation a little bit less on the draw. Or sorry, on the play. Because really, I care about Blood Moon. I don't really care about Chalice and Trinisphere all that much. I think I'll still keep them anyway. But it's possible that, like, just bringing in an Aethersworn Canonist or something to just have another body is just as good as something like Force of Negation or Brainstorm. I think I will keep this. It has access to 3 different basic lands. And I can Gilded Drake my opponent's first aggressive play, and then to ferry the Gilded Drake back to my hand. I'm 100% getting a basic island with this, so I think I'll just grab it now. Oh wow, opponent's hand is slow. In which case, I would like to draw something to do this turn that's not Teferi. Like, I'll be okay with playing a Teferi, but I would really rather not play that out quite yet. I can play out the the backside of this as a blocker. I'm not going to need blue, 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 blue. And so if I can avoid taking the point of life off of this for a while, I'm good with that. So let's tap this, leaving up Swords to Plowshares. Okay, opponent has just gotten stuck on mana. I get to return this as the, like, big-ass front side, right? I need to set a stop here in order to do this. And I still get to scry. I don't think I need the land currently. I will take the Force of Will. Oh, this is a neat combo. Alright, so we just name instant, and then we get to put the Force of Will into hand. That turn was so much better than anticipated. Alright, yeah, our opponent just, I think they mulliganed to 5 and got stuck here, but, like, it's round 1, and we can already see that there's some really cool synergies in this deck. I've looked at my opening hand here. It has a mix of lands and spells. It has a couple of proactive / reactive cards versus combo, as well as a couple of value-oriented cards for the fair matchups. This is the sort of thing that I think I will be looking for. My opponent has gone to 5, so hopefully I just don't get easily comboed out here. And Rex X, thank you very much for following. I hope you're having a good morning. I'll let them have that. I don't think that's worth 2 cards here. Oh gosh. My opponent just whiffed off Once Upon a Time after a mulligan to 5. That's feel bad. There's multiple options for what they could be. I am not confident about what they are at this time, so I think I'm not gonna play Meddling Mage this turn. Like, it could be an Eldrazi deck, it could be an Elves deck, it could be a Hogak deck. A bottom Gilded Drake. I will keep Wasteland. It seems sufficiently mean. I mean, how picky do you get to be on 5, right? Um, I don't really need white. I guess I could. All right. Let's play a Meddling Mage. Yeah, Baron confirmed not working, or at least not working with everything. Uh, let's name that. God, is Gilded... If Gilded Drake with Uro is also bugged, I am going to lose my shit, because, like, that's the whole reason to play a Gilded Drake. Great. All right. I guess this is a fine time to brainstorm. Really wanted to be able to fetch, but okay. Go back like this and this. I haven't even drawn an ether file yet, PVDH. I'm not sure if that card is really in this deck. Sorry, friend, I have Force of Negation instead. Bottom that. Bottom that. God, just Baron doesn't fucking work at all? Oh, no, that's the same interaction as before. That's the same one we already know is bugged. Yeah, what? Is this really just to find, like, spirit guides? Whiskey Jack. Thank you very much for the support. I hope you're having a great day. All right. Page in. Force of Negation in. Lavinia seems great. Rest in Peace seems great. How are these effects? Okay. Oh, the Culling the Weak deck instead. Okay, that makes sense. All right, yeah, so my opponent's saying I would have named Shepard too based on my play preferences and the match history we have together. This is a very rare occurrence. Yeah, that meddling mage was tricky for me. I figured I had a good chance of losing to that card. All right. I don't want Jailer. I don't think I want Swords to Plowshares. I don't think I want Gilded Drakes. I'm going down on that is fine. Trimming one of these is fine. Question mark. Peter Storm, thank you very much for following. Yeah, I mean, I have a force of will and a force of negation here. This is awesome. Uh-oh. Okay. Welp. Now we'll get a full look at opponent's deck. Where is the Dread Return? There it is. All right. Concede to that now. Act got me good. So I feel like I've sideboarded in a fine way. Opponent might be making some fine adjustments here. The Skyclaves can still take things like Chrome Moxen that are played out. Like, they have taxed. I don't think I like this hand. This hand is pretty similar to the last one. I think I keep this time. I could see boarding Vial out just for blue cards. I think that's reasonable. Don't think I junk that here. Brainstorm and put my counterspell on top of my library. Ooh. That's quite good. I'll lose my pitch card for my counterspell here, which is why I've put the counterspell 2 down. I think it's better to go ahead and put Canonist in play than to Wasteland. But there are definitely some awkward scenarios that can happen. where my opponent just goes like land Lotus Petal and floops is a spy the 3-drop one? A spy into play, and then like we stare each other down. The more interesting question is like when I get to my next turn, do I wasteland or hold up Force of Negation? I think I wasteland since they didn't make another land drop. I would love to draw a blue card so that I can just play a 2/2 next turn. I would love, love, love to double my clock right now. I do have a blue card hanging out in the command zone, so to speak. Might be worth just putting Yorion into my hand this turn. Then I still have Force of Negation available, but I can afford to tap out in future turns for some threat. Oh, that's very good too. With an Aethersworn Canonist in play, I don't think I need to hold up 2 counterspells. There's also another good reason not to hold up 2 counterspells in play. Awkwardly, we really want one more point of damage here so that like I can 2-turn clock my opponent. Like a Fibble Thip, for example, would be an awesome draw. All right, we have just gotten the concession from the opponent. GG's. Okay, I have an opening hand that is, I think, kind of underwhelming. I'm gonna go ahead and mulligan this one. Like, we already have double Caracas, which I don't want, and I don't think we have a game plan that's generically good. I will keep this on a 6 and pitch the second Baron. Current plan involves pitching a Gilded Drake to a Force of Will and seeing what happens from there. All right, we are most likely playing against Death and Taxes. So having the Caracas is nice. That means I can bounce a Thalia that's played out. Well, Orange Shield, welcome back. I think Death and Taxes is a fine choice in the current metagame. I think it's, as usual, pretty darn good versus the Delver style decks of the format. Like, the fact that Death and Taxes has, like, Flicker Wisps and Caracas and Rest in Peace and all that sort of stuff. I don't really want to counter this. but I think I need to. Like, otherwise they just, like, Rashad and port me into oblivion. And I never get to do anything with all my mana. Yeah, like, the fact that you have so many ways to interact with an Uro is just so nice. That, like, you're not dead to one of the premier cards in the format. – 100% of the time this is getting a blue source. I'm just going to go ahead and fetch now. You know, Aven, Mind Sensor, and Friends technically exist. Yep. Yeah, I play Modern when people donate for it. I'm not the biggest Modern enthusiast. Because every time I like go into the format, I try to play something. And then I'm like, this thing is fine, but there's too much degenerate stuff going on here. I could take their Stoneforge this turn. And then plan on baroning it back later. Like 3 for doing that. I think that's fine. Yoink. Favorite legacy pet card across the whole format. That's tricky. The thing that immediately comes to mind is Crystalline Giant, just because the card is so fun. But, like, there are definitely others. Alright. I mean, deal. That Stoneforge Mystic was a 1/2 that wasn't gonna do a damn thing. So, like, I'm very glad you did that instead of just hard casting a Batterskull. I wonder if my opponent thinks we're closer to Stoneblade than we are. That's a very good name from them. Lol. Alright, cool. Now my opponent can bounce my Baron and let me bounce more stuff. Okay, Baron worked that time. Yay! Cards working as intended. Yay! We are playing a blue-white Vial deck. Conceptually, it's similar to Esper Vial. We just made the mana base better. The waiting to see if our cards work adds so much excitement, though. Sure. Flicker Wisp is awkward. Yorian worded. Own and control. Yeah. I don't really want them to be able to Flicker Wisp their own recruiter. I think that means I Skyclave it this turn. Yeah, I hate the shit out of Esper Vial's mana base. I think it is very bad. Wasn't really planning on my opponent having the third Swords to Plowshares. Restoration Angel is control. Doing that at least means that the Revoker can't attack. It gives my opponent a better creature, but like I still have a Restoration Angel in the hole. Yeah, but the thing is, I'm good with them wisping my token rather than them wisping a Stoneforge Mystic later. Like I'm good with this exchange. I'm gonna have a Restoration Angel mid combat on this turn. Oh, maybe not mid combat. Hmm. No, probably still mid combat. I think I have to give up some of that value. The port activation here, super relevant. I think I'll take this one out. Worse things can happen to me if that's still around. I have to develop a plan for how to beat the Batterskull. There might be some shops open around me. That's not the sort of thing that I am currently checking. Like, I don't want to go and hang out with a bunch of people I don't know right now. Okay. So we'll see how my opponent plays this next turn out. I think they'll just equip to Gilded Drake, but we'll see. Alright, how do I want to play this? I think I just block and bounce rather than, like, attempt to trade. Like, I expected my opponent just equip to Gilded Drake, crash in there, force my chump with Restoration Angel. But that is not what happened. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can do both of these things. And I am going to do both of those things in all likelihood, so I guess I will fetch. Baron. Baron bounces Gilded Drake. That's very good. That's very, very, very good. Am I confident enough to attack with Restoration Angel? I don't think so. I think in theory I need to trade with this Batterskull and then counter it on the way back down. Assuming it gets bounced. I'd love to draw a Wasteland. Getting rid of my opponent's Rashadan Port is pretty huge. Trying to multi-block the Batterskull is actually really hard when my opponent has a Caracas as well. I'd have to, like, block everything on the Batterskull. Then my opponent could Caracas bounce one of them. Kill my Restoration Angel. Creature or Planeswalker? Creature or Planeswalker. I think I'm just gonna chump this turn. Game is gonna get complicated. The shame Yorion is own and control. I think I'm just like using Yorion, blinking Restoration Angel and Baron, and bouncing my opponent's stuff. I think I'm not bouncing Baron with this. That'll work out just fine for me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to target both of my creatures. All right, they're not even going to let me get that far. That's fine. I'll stream until the league's over, so expect about 2 more hours. Blink that. Play my land. Play Baron. Bounce the Germ. Go to my end step. Actually, I can blink the Yorion. Okay, this is cute. The Restoration Angel, the Yorion. Maybe this wasn't just better than blinking the Revoker, though. Yeah, this wasn't better than blinking the Revoker. Yeah, I messed up. Yeah, I should have just blinked the Revoker, because then my opponent doesn't have the line of just equip attack. That's fine. This way will make my opponent spend a bunch of mana. But I should have just Restoration Angel blinked. Baron, bounced Revoker. Yup. I think recycling Baron is important. And I want to have a non-legendary creature around. I'm going to chump with Yorion, despite the fact that, like, Yorion is really sick with Caracas. All right. Good stuff. Hope they don't have another Caracas. I hope they don't have another Caracas. It just, like, simplifies my life so much if I get rid of that. Yuck. I think I'm gonna just, try to shuffle away these ether vials at some point. No, maybe not. Bounce Baron, recast Baron, return Restoration Angel to hand is a thing that I can do in this turn cycle. I'm not gonna do that, though. Just gonna bounce that back to my hand to draw a card. Try to convert these vials back into real cards. Nope. Nah. I just want to keep the board clear here. Brainstorm through these vials, get to something new that lets me shuffle. While clocking for 5 a turn. Or not. I guess not is okay. I've got a tenuous lock on this game. So we'll go ahead and do this. Play that. I haven't bounced anything to my hand yet. I will go ahead and return that. Move to the end step. Put the Baron trigger on the stack first. We'll Restoration Angel blink the Charming Prince. We'll use it to scry that land to the bottom. As well as that second Ether Vial. And then I'll pick up a fresh card. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, between the Magic Online lag and just, the general nature of this game, the clock is real. Magic Online, please. Hello? No, Vial definitely does something. Like, I am drawing at least 1 extra card a turn, oftentimes 2 extra cards in a turn. Like, I have Fibblethip Vial that I can start doing. Like, until I was really far ahead, I did not want the Vial. That feels like I'm being ghosted. No, I guess that takes me off of both Force of Will and Force of Negation. I guess that's fine. Yeah, gameplay's super interesting. But we're like, oh, that makes things easy. We're definitely in the garbage time where, like, this game is over. But it just takes me a couple of minutes to close it out. I wish I could have time for restarting the client in between this game and the next game of this match. But that is not going to happen. All right, cool. What do I want? I think I want the Teferis. Gilded Drakes are kind of awkward. There are a couple of very specific sideboard cards like the Blue-White Court or Cataclysm or Gideon that I would really want to Force of Negation. Otherwise, I don't think I want to draw that card. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. This hand is unexciting, but fine. I can't answer that currently. And I think I need to keep my removal alive for later. An Aether Vial start is definitely going to be a double-edged sword here. I think I'm just going to go ahead and F6 through my opponent's turns. Giving up a little bit of information here, but it is what it is. Sure. I was just planning on just wastelanding my opponent and limiting their resources, but that's pretty darn good. Yup. I'm going to preemptively break up my opponent's recruiter chain. I don't care about giving them the 2-2 right now. I think I'm going to leave the vial at 2 until I have a reason to tick it up. Because, like, Fibble Fip recursion is a thing. Actually, maybe not. Maybe I just do this. Mangara is great, but, like, Skyclave Apparition does what Mangara does better. Sure. I'll trade, that's fine. Oh, that's annoying. That means I don't get Yori in this turn. Sorry for the lack of commentary here. I'm just trying not to time out. I need to win this game. God damn it. Triple port is very rough here. This may be a tick ether vial up to 5 situation. That's very good. I'm gonna do something suboptimal and just fetch here. I'm supposed to leave this in play, but I think I just need to start F6ing turns. Alright, so I have Baron recursion as of next turn. Alright, do your thing. Well, that's insane. Right, now that I have Baron Caracas, I probably need to turn off the auto yields that I have for Rishadenport. I'm gonna take this up to 5. That was a mistake. I shouldn't have played that for clock-based reasons. Gonna be tight. That's fine. Fine. Yes to both of these. No, I can't remember a single time when a Magic Online update made something that was functionally working not work. Recruiter is annoying here. This Flicker Wisp is very good. I have a pile of Gilded Drakes to help out with this current situation. Oh, that's a nuisance. Yep. Odo, I need these seconds very badly. Alright, I just time out here, but I have the win, I think, in 2 turns. So, like, I'd play a Gilded Drake, I'd take a Flicker Wisp. I'd Vial a Gilded Drake, I'd take a Flicker Wisp. I would Baron, get a Gilded Drake back. Yeah. So we win that one, if not for Magic Online client-side lag, which is unfortunate. So, like, we have things really wrapped up with, like, Baron Caracas, but that's okay. Like, not mad. Alright, I've kept my opening hand, which is kind of unexciting, but has a decent number of tools at my disposal. My opponent is playing a creature-based deck, it's great to have the Gilded Drake, and if my opponent is not playing a creature-based deck, it just pitches to Force of Negation. It just pitches to Force of Negation. Um, That's interesting. Or just Force of Negation this? I probably just Force of Negation this. Makes my opponent's mana very awkward. I'm going to go ahead and Force of Negation that, because my Gilded Drake isn't going to be good anyway. I'm going to try to punch a hole here. Just hard call. Gilded Drake has returned. I'll probably brainstorm in my opponent's end step. We'll see. There's some merit to just casting the brainstorm on my main phase so that if I find an Ether Vial, I can play it. I don't know if this is a hand where I actually want an Ether Vial, though. Yes. That's fine. Well, I'll cast this brainstorm now. The Gilded Drake is currently not good. I will pitch that. I don't think I want to pitch either of my lands. I want to work towards, like, Yori and blinking stuff. Yeah, I think I'm good with that. I'll fetch a basic plains off of this. Then I can have 3 basics in play and access to blue, blue, blue. I am good with that. Do I want to be able to force a will in this turn cycle, or do I want to put Yorion into my hand? I could also just play Baron as a 2/2, knowing that I can blink it with Restoration Angel next turn. Yeah, I don't hate that. My opponent's unlikely to be able to do some of the things that I care about most, like Chandra Torch of Defiance this turn. I think our opponent is experiencing the lag issue. Like, these are some long pauses in times where they, like, maybe don't have a real play. Yeah, I think my opponent is lagging. Yay, Magic Online. I would very much like my opponent to play a creature here. Get the maximum Baron value, if that is the case. Yes. Bounce the Rebel Master back. And I think I'm just looking at closing out this game as the beatdown rather than having to play defensively. Yeah, I think I'm just going to attack for 5 and then Force of Will. Basically, whatever my opponent's play is. And then I can put a Yorion into my hand. My opponent will have fluked another creature into play. I can, like, just Yorion Blink, do some Baron Bounce stuff. I think taking my opponent's Chrome Mox on turn 1 ended up being very, very, very good. My opponent's playing a like traditional Moon Stompy deck with like the Karns and Chandras. I'm a little more scared than if they're the Basuda red build. Seems like they're trying to cast a Chalice of the Void and they're having some trouble. Ugh. Yeah, I think I just accept the beatdown roll here and try to put my opponent on a 2-ish turn clock. Ancient Tomb is a very real thing. Pretty well, Ghost. We're 2-1 technically. We timed out due to some moto lag in round 3, but we had the game locked up pretty tightly. That was one of those days where it's like, it feels like a 3-0, but it's a 2-1. Yeah, okay, they are playing a Basuda red version. So I will get some sick Yorion-based value. Attack with Restoration Angel for 3, bounce the Garrison back to their hand, then have 7 power worth of flying in the air that they can't do anything about. We seem pretty well suited to this sort of matchup. We have a decent number of basics, so we don't get Blood Mooned into Oblivion. The Trinispheres and Chalices, like, while slightly annoying, are the sorts of things that I can absolutely just play around. Yeah. I agree, opponent. So I think before I trimmed some Gilded Drakes and some Brainstorms. I will probably do that again. The fairies are good, and then I don't think it's crazy to board in some of this stuff just as like other things to jump in front of 2/2 creatures. But I think the Gilded Drake thing is something that like giving them the 3/3 is a little rough. And if I get to endgame inevitability, I'm going to beat them anyway. I don't think I need the Gilded Drake engine. I think I'm just going to play these as 2/2s on the draw. I don't know how my blue count math for the force effects works on the 80 card decks. I'm going to assume we're still okay. Hey! I don't love this hand. Like, the Caracas is already a mulligan. Really soft to a moon. I think this one goes back. This hand is better than the previous one. I think I throw back the redundant one of these, despite the fact that, like, just an endgame fat creature is totally reasonable. Agrippa, I'm playing the deck list as it was submitted. But, like, blue cards pitching to Force of Will and Force of Negation is really huge in this deck, since you are playing both of them. Like, there's 7 of those effects in the main deck. Alright, let's see if we get mooned on turn 1 and just lose this. Yeah, I think we set up a Fibblethip engine one time with this hand. I mean, that's annoying, but that's not me losing the game instantly to Blood Moon, so I'm good with it. I have 2 draws to draw a land. If I can do that, I'm probably okay, because then I get to, like, start skyclaving things. Yep, I don't get to say anything about that. Okay, here's a land. That's great. Chronosphere doing some work for my opponent here. The Fireflux squad can be absolutely terrifying. Because my opponent can attack with Hannah or Garrison, make the 2 tokens, and then floop the tokens into something else. Outside of Blood Moon, that's probably the thing I'm most scared of. Alright. So we will be attacking my opponent's creatures rather than the Trinispheres. Probably. If I get mooned, I really want white mana. play that I'm making is going to be a little bit soft to a Bone Crusher Giant specifically. But otherwise it keeps me from taking chip damage from the tokens. There's also a world where I could go like full Mad Lad and try to go after the Chrome Mox there, but I think that's too risky. Like, if I keep making it a few more turns and I start getting, like, this into play, or Yorion into play, or a Skyclave into play, I think I end up in a good spot. The squad? Azaret. Well, all Swords to Plowshares that. That's very good and not a super commonly played card right now. Actually, I just have Caracas. Hmm. I don't know that I want to play that Caracas haste game all match, though. I could. My opponent has double Ancient Tomb? I totally could. I guess I get super punished by Blood Moon. I think I'm supposed to get a Tundra. I think I'm supposed to get a Tundra. That's weird, but it feels correct. It gives me double blue and access to the triple white that I need this turn. So this Skyclave can pretty safely attack in since there's a 0-drop under it. I don't think I want to attack with the other one. They also might be valuing their life total. Yeah? Maybe Giver of Runes is too good. Like, what to do this turn I think is very difficult because, like, Akka and Giver and just holding up counter magic all have their merits. Giver lets me most easily end this game. quickly. But if my opponent draws a Fireflux squad, for example, things get a little awkward. I'm less worried about like a Blood Moon effect now than I was previously. So I think with that, I'm okay with tapping out Forgiver. All right, and we take that one down up to a 3-1 that feels like a 4-0. All right, I have kept a relatively strong opening hand here that has a lot of lands and a good amount of flexibility. There's some world where I just like fetch to play around a Stifle on my turn one, but I think leaving myself with the flexibility is nice. Yeah, the YouTube algorithm is weird. Maybe we'll chat a little bit about this while we play against our Jund opponent, question mark? EES opponent? Ooh. Well, okay. Like, the YouTube algorithm was something I didn't care about for a long time, and then one of my co-hosts, Brian Boschenroll, started trying to game the algorithm, and he got huge returns for doing it. And I was finally like, well, okay, I'll play ball. And so I started doing thumbnails and changing how I did my titles, caring about release times, doing some editing, that sort of stuff, and it made a huge difference. Sort of interesting that my opponent Chrome Moxed Veil of Summer preemptively. Maybe they thought I was on Delver. They just wanted to play around a Daze with their Thoughtseize effect. I would say my opponent is probably favored in game one here, like with the way that my hand currently looks. But for the post sideboard games, I am going to get a lot of stuff that I can bring in. The game plan here is draw well and hope that opponent doesn't go off. I have Force of Wills, Force of Negations, Meddling Mages that are really good hits. The Skyclave is fine too. Like, Skyclave taking a Chrome Mox is not nothing here. My opponent also could have a second Veil of Summer. That could be another reason why they played out the Chrome Mox on green on turn one against the blue deck. So Skyclave eating a Chrome Mox might be more relevant than I even think it is. You may have a 0/0 if you kill my Skyclave. I don't like that this game is basically fully out of my control currently. I have just like so little agency in the way this game goes right now. Like, I can make an ad nauseum worse by attacking. That's about it. Alright. I guess I just play out a Skyclave and hold up Wasteland. Hello and welcome, Charble. So, Akka lets me scry, but I would like to save the blue card in my hand for Force of Will or Force of Negation. And if I miss, I can also just, like, play this as another creature. Garble, that makes sense, yeah. And it did definitely throw me off. That was a good video. Bryant knows his stuff. The opponent has pondered grabbing a tropical island specifically. Doesn't TES currently play an island? TheEpicStorm.com. No, the Epic Storm, or at least Bryant's version, is currently not playing an island. Okay. Makes sense then. My opponent shuffled with the Ponder. Fibblethip has been pretty good. We've gotten it going with Caracas once or twice. We bounced it with a few different things. Like, it's been better than an Elvish Visionary. We now get to put our opponent to 1. You don't, like, randomly draw a card or anything, do you? Alright. I'm going to bottom that. And bottom that. I am going to go ahead and fetch twice. This decreases the storm count required for my opponent to kill me by 1, but lets me play towards a very unlikely but cool line. Where I grab both Force of Will or Force of Negation and a blue card off of Alrund here. I'll name instant. No, I hit a Vial and a Drake. Alright, opponent. Can you go off? Because I cannot stop you. Oh, wow. I feel like we got lucky there. The two Wastelands did so much work in keeping me alive. Like, we did not cast a single piece of counter magic that game. Alright, so 100%, I want Deafening Silence and Aethersworn Canonist, and probably still Lavinia. And Force of Negation. And then these other cards are fine. Teferi Stopping Veil of Summer is kind of cool. This is probably a matchup where I start by like pulling out the cards that I 100% don't want and go from there. Like, I don't want Palace Jailer. I don't want Gilded Drake. I don't want Swords to Plowshares. What's the current standing on Xantid Swarm? 2 Hope of Girapor currently in sideboards. I can bounce Hope of Girapar with Baron. I can exile it with Skyclave. Yeah, that probably means I'm not supposed to keep this stuff. Now, I can consider these things. Like, past in Flames is, like, something that exists. Not currently played? Not currently played. I thought the version I played with Bryant had it. I deleted that version. Okay. Well, maybe if I don't need to be playing around Past in Flames, then, well, maybe don't. But if I'm not supposed to, like, be actively thinking about Past in Flames with the current version, I think that's okay. Yeah, there's still Echo. I think Echo against me is a risky proposition. Sneep. We may see a Witherbloom command from our opponent, which will be pretty good against a lot of our stuff. Element 25, thank you very much for following. So I'll go Tundra on turn 1 and Deafening Silence. I think the Deafening Silence is good enough that I'll probably Force of Negation a discard spell that's pointed at me. Charble, I believe they said that Lavinia was going to be hot fixed. So I think Lavinia is good. Hummingbird, thank you very much for following as well. Yeah, after every major Magic Online update, there's always something. You never know what it's going to be in any given week. This week, Lavinia was the worst of them. For anyone who's not familiar with what happened for a couple of days there, Lavinia was basically stopping your opponent from casting everything, rather than just the spells it was supposed to. That one was pretty bad. opponent apparently has a tricky spot here. All right, we get to Deafening Silence, which will buy so much time for all my slower bullshit to come online. My opponent only has 3 cards left. So they started with double Lotus Petal, Chrome Mox, Imprint, and a Brainstorm. So they're probably not super well prepared to like both get rid of Deafening Silence and go off. Oh, yikes. Aether Vial is a great draw. Next turn, I can either Teferi bounce Chrome Mox or Skyclave Chrome Mox. Probably Skyclave Chrome Mox because Teferi is blue and pitches to Force of Negation. Maybe Skyclave LED. I can Skyclave the LED this turn because that's worth a lot of mana after a Wish or something. And then I can Teferi bounce the Chrome Mox and kind of get a pseudo Time Walk out of that. Oh no, I trim it. I don't want to say super regularly, but once a month or something like that. It gets itchy once it's been going for a little while, so usually have to cut it back. All right. Overall thoughts on the deck list. It was pretty good. Like, it's very unfortunate that Baron doesn't work with Haka. But overall, I have a pretty positive view on this deck list. I will say that I feel like the 80 card decks are a little bit less consistent at executing their game plan. So, like, for example, I saw very few Aether Vial based opening hands when, if I was playing with a 60 card version of this, I might have expected to see a few more. The Yorion definitely did some heavy lifting, though it was very good against, like, Red Prison, for example. The ability to just grab an extra blue card to pitch to Force of Will came up once or twice. I would absolutely run this main deck back, I think. I don't know if 4 Gilded Drakes is too many. 4 Gilded Drakes seems like a lot, and Gilded Drake is the sort of card that gets a little bit better as the game goes on. It's not really great in an opening hand, and I guess most of the time your game 1 plan with Gilded Drake is just pitch it to, like, Force of Will or Force of Negation, and so, like, it's fine in that respect. It's a little weird not having access to, like, the Recruiter and blue-white blinky thing. Soul Hoarder, there we go. It's weird not having access to that, but I feel like the deck kind of works as is. I like this much better than Esper Vial. You're not tripping over your own mana nearly as much, and there's still some, like, cute, fun things in here. As far as the sideboard goes, I like that most of this sideboard is dedicated towards beating the fair stuff, and I felt like I had fine sideboarding options in every round. And when things like weren't great, I felt like I had access to enough stuff to swap out my bad cards. What's the rationale for a 1/1 split in the white 4 drops? Well, Palace Jailer is an awesome effect to have access to, and so is Restoration Angel, right? So view this more as like you don't have room for that many 4 drops, and you'd prefer some variety rather than like one of these things is like very clearly better than the other. Um, I am sure that Soul Herder was tried in this deck, and I feel like this deck is more about bouncing things back to hand with Baron and Karakas and Fibblethip than the Esper Vial is. Esper Vial has more ETB triggers with like Recruiters and Baleful Strix and all that sort of stuff, and resetting Plague Engineers on different colors or different names. So I feel like the Soul Herder is probably better there than here. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this. For those of you who watch this on YouTube later, if you made it this far, please throw me a like or a comment. That sort of thing means a lot. The deck list and donation information is always in the video description if you want to try this out yourself. See ya!